appreciate it. Okay, I am going to share my screen. We've got a few slides to walk through to describe this effort, and then we'll have a kind of robust discussion afterwards. But please feel free if something comes up during it that you want to clarify. We make this pretty informal. And I appreciate seeing that everyone has put themselves on mute as we go. So let me start here by sharing my screen. Okay, seeing it okay, everyone? All right. So what we're talking about here is collaborating in a really, I think, potentially unique and powerful way around climate emergency declaration. This effort grew out of a group of us, primarily city elected officials, that started meeting earlier this year. The name of the group had been Minnesota Cities Climate Caucus, but the name is not really important. What's important is that it has been a voluntary collaboration of people that, and nonpartisan, but that share an alarm around the impacts of climate change on our own communities, on our state, and on our world. And we're coming together, especially around this effort here, to help provide leadership to recognize and make clear the alarming conditions that are happening and do something about it. And the thing that I want to emphasize here is that we're realizing and believe that we can have more influence, more power, more ability to affect change when we work together. So a bit of background before I turn it over to some of my fellow team members here. In Minnesota, the interesting thing is we have a bipartisan set of goals that were adopted in 2007 when then Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty signed the Next Generation Energy Act into law. And those goals have goals around 2015, 2025, and 2050. We are not on track to achieve those goals as of yet. The eventual goal in 2050 is an 80% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which some will say needs to be more aggressive. But as of right now, we have work to do from a state perspective. Now, the concept here that we're talking about is to have communities, local governments around the state simultaneously make a declaration of a climate emergency, as well as commit to some local action and call for action at the state and federal level. Now, a little bit of background on this concept. An organization called the Climate Mobilization started this a few years ago in the US. And at a very high level, what it's about is saying that the situation is critical and we need to mobilize society and government in a way to make very substantial progress on climate change by 2030. That's what the science is calling for. Now, interestingly, as of this date, over 2,000 jurisdictions in 34 countries have gone ahead and declared a climate emergency, including 3 communities in Minnesota. And the first one was actually Crystal Bay Township on the North Shore, town of a few hundred people, back in early 2019. Minneapolis was after that and later in 2019. And then earlier this year, around about April or so, Duluth declared a climate emergency. So now let's talk about, I'm going to pass it to Steve to start talking about why do this?
Hi, so I'm a scientist and educator during my day job. I'm a trained physicist, and typically when scientists talk, we always talk in probabilities, and we always kind of couch things. We're a little bit, like not always using language of certainty. And what's unique about essentially recent scientific communications on the issue of climate change is it's unequivocal that one, the atmosphere, the temperature of our oceans, the temperature of our land, things are changing. And it's now no longer debatable that humans are driving this change and that something needs to be done. And so that goes back to the point that the IPCC has come out with, was that, you know, we need to start making changes. You know, the question is when do you make changes and how much are you going to put into it? Because if you wait long enough, the changes have to be huge and the costs are astronomically huge. And so the evidence is there, and it's dramatic evidence that our climate is shifting, and it is an emergency because the climate is a large system. It takes a lot of time to change it. And so if we're going to be changing it, we need to start acting now. If we're going to avoid the catastrophic effects, not just to future generations, but potentially even to ours. If we just keep going to business of normal, we're going to see changes that are not really great. So it's one thing to talk about what's going on in the you know, kind of global perspective and saying, oh yes, the global temperature is changing. But to speak specifically to what's going on in Minnesota is something that we need to do. And so just kind of going around in order, the first is stuff, I mean, this is all fairly recently. In fact, most of these are from this summer, but we all had air quality issues. I mean, there was times where I couldn't go out and enjoy outside because you would essentially be breathing air that was unhealthy for you. Not just if you were at risk groups, but even healthy people like myself. And I actually went running, unfortunately, while the air quality was changing, and came back, and I was 2 days, I was kind of coughing and not feeling so great. I can imagine what happens when people actually have breathing issues like asthma. The Duluth floods that happened a couple of years ago were a direct result of the atmosphere warming, being able to hold more water and then releasing it all at once. So although the average rainfall in a lot of places is fine, the problem is we're getting drought followed by, you know, huge rainfall events. And it's not the average that we're looking at, or we should be looking at, which it's the individual events. And cities are having to deal with, how do you build infrastructure to handle the large rainfall events? How do you build infrastructure to deal with droughts? Because, you know, this summer we had fires that were going on directly related to warming and drought conditions. And then you actually look at the drought. We're still in a drought. You know, thankfully it's been raining the last couple of days up where I'm at, but it's still, you know, I can go outside and I can look at the river that borders Minnesota and North Dakota, and it's down. It's really down, and that tells me we're in drought. If you talk to farmers, they'll tell you that they're worried. They got crops in this year, but it was using the soil moisture that was already there. What's going to happen next year? They're very worried if we don't get enough precipitation. So it's here. I don't think you have to look very far to see that it's actually impacting our cities. And if you look at the picture of Duluth, that's expensive to fix. If you look at the fires that happen, just fighting the fires is expensive, but then dealing with the aftermath, especially if it impacts parts of your city, you know, that's costly. So I think, Bill, you're up next.
So this slide shows that we're giving you an opportunity to lead. You're in the car. The slide says we want to mobilize, amplify, and use our leverage. So the fact that you're here probably indicates that I'm preaching to the choir, and you're part of the choir. But if we will just all act together, our input will be amplified and we'll make beautiful noise together. The slide reminds us that especially in the age of the internet, there's power in numbers, from fundraising to doing things on Facebook to all the things that you can imagine, that the internet has shown us that power in numbers exists still. But every action or every thing that we do, it takes a leader to start the action. And we're asking you to be the leaders or precipitate someone else to be the leaders. And by doing this all together, we'll gain leverage, and many people acting together will amplify what we're going to do. And the things that we're asking you to do are really kind of simple, and we've tried to make it, as the following slides will show, so that it's easy for you to do this. We've got a template for a changeable climate emergency resolution, which maybe your city wants to not label it as an emergency. I want to label it that way in my city, but there is an emergency. Scientists like Steve have been telling us since the 1800s that the greenhouse effect is going to change climate, and everything they said all along has come true, more or less in the same schedule or faster than what we've thought and heard from the scientists. So in addition to the template, we give you a one-pager. It's a one-page synopsis of what we're doing and why we're trying to do it that way. And then if we all act together, and especially if we come together simultaneously and pass a resolution, it's going to be newsworthy. It's going to be something that other people hear about. It's going to poll well if you're a politician like me, because people are increasingly concerned about the environment. But more than that, when you go away and aren't on the earth anymore, your grandchildren are going to know that you did something, and you didn't just ignore this. So the next slides are by somebody else. Thank you.
All right, as Bill said, and normally we'd have Susie in here, but she wasn't able to make it right now. But as Bill said, the crux of what we're doing here is coming together, local governments, cities and counties around the state, to simultaneously declare a climate emergency, magnify our impact by doing it together, amplify our voice both for within our own communities and around the state. And this slide shows right now a partial list. It's actually growing, of cities that are in the process of considering it. And so with that, and as Bill said, we have, let's see here, a number of tools to make this easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share these tools with you on the screen. There are links to them that were in the invite, and Emma's going to put those in the chat as well, so that you can see the tools that we have in place. The aim is to do this on January 24th, 25th, early next year. The timing of that is set to be in advance of the state legislative session by about 1 week, so we can help start setting some terms and start making some requests of state support and backing for the things that we're doing. We'll also be working more over the next few months on a communications plan, because we do, as Bill mentioned, do anticipate that this will generate interest and news. And so we're going to be thinking about how we maximize that both within communities and statewide. So with that, I'm going to get out of this and share with you these documents so we can see what they look like. All right, so I hope you're seeing now the one pager. And what this is it kind of summarizes a lot of the information that we just went through here on the webinar. But it says here, what is it we're doing? Why are we doing it? What it is, the template, a link to the template, some background information, and then a partial list of the communities that are in the process of working through doing this with us on the 24th and 25th. The other tool here is a template to actually declare a climate emergency, a resolution template. And the way this is organized, and you can see there's some comments along the side, and that's things for you to think about as you customize this for your own community. This is meant as a template. It's not meant as, boy, I have to take this and use every word of it. We want to have similar messaging, but also recognize that each community is likely at a different place on their journey on climate work. And so this is meant to be a starting point from which you can customize as you see fit. And the way it's organized is it starts with the local impacts. So you fill in the name of your community. What has happened to you? What kind of experiences have you seen within the community initially here? And then it goes to, it also talks clearly about that the biggest burden of this is going to be faced by those most disadvantaged among us, as well as young people. It then shifts from there to talking about what's going on in Minnesota, the Energy Act, some of the data on what's happened in Minnesota. From there, it goes to global impacts. Talks about the UN, the IPCC. It talks about who has already declared a climate emergency, and then it shifts to the resolved part of the template, where declaring the emergency, and then something we recommend, this is to use it to pair with some local action that's appropriate for your community. This list here is of a number of ideas that you may pick from, creating a climate action plan if you need to, doing some Green Step Cities things, other kinds of things that may be appropriate for your community, your local government. Again, completely customizable, you can use or whatever these make sense. And then it closes with a call at state level and federal level for support. The bottom here, there's some other reference links if you want to see the text of the resolutions that Duluth, Minneapolis, and Crystal Bay did, and also some links to climate action plans, sustainability plans. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop sharing. We've thrown a lot of information at you, and want to turn it back to Lola to help facilitate feedback and discussion and any questions that anyone has.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. Well, and we have a half hour or so for questions and discussion, comparing notes. How would this work in your community? What maybe might be hard? What kind of help would you need? So let me just throw it open. What questions do people have? Yeah, Joan. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, forgot about that. I don't know if you're all aware that the UN released a wonderful press release on this past Monday, the 26th, and it is actually a statement by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And one of the things, I was looking at it again today, and you can probably just all Google this. He said, and I thought this could somehow be modified within the bottom of the first page of your resolution, or brought up in your communications concept that you're talking about. But he said, we are still on track for a global temperature rise of 2.7 degrees Celsius, a far cry from the 1.5 degrees Celsius target to which the world agreed under the Paris Agreement. And I thought that was pretty a powerful statement that he made. So I'm just kind of throwing this out as a potential, to modify the template a little bit, or maybe just individually when people go through it, with your own cities, you can just.
We can add that new information. Excellent quote. Unfortunately, the negative information coming out on this issue seems to see new stuff every week or two. But that's a great thing to add, that we're not on track.
Right, we're not keeping up with the latest data. Yes, sadly.
What's
So-
going to be exciting is COP26 is starting this weekend. And if nothing else, it's going to draw attention to this and show. I mean, I'm hoping there's going to be a surprise and I'm going to go, wow, look, these people have done a lot more than we thought. But I think what is going to be evident is that we're not where we need to be. And, I'd like to say that everyone's going to pull an all-nighter and we're just going to, do a really bang-up job, but this is not one of these things that you can pull an all-nighter and solve and do.
Well, and one of the things that I think is it's important to remember is, the COP is a gathering of nations, and every level of government has a job to do. And what you all can do is quite different than what nations can do.
Yeah. In fact, if I want to tag on to that, because the statement is always that states are the laboratories of democracy. And I always say the cities are the petri dishes then. And we really are the ones that are doing the work. I mean, the federal government can say, we have these ideas. They can provide the funding, they can provide the impetus, but we have to actually do the work. And I'm really, really happy to see counties on this, because I think counties are the, I don't want to say missing link, but a vital link is what I say, between the state and cities, because counties do provide an extremely important level of government in Minnesota, and are clearly play a role in addressing and dealing with the climate emergency that we find ourselves in.
We did introductions before we went through the slide deck, and I see at least a couple people that I think joined since then. Charlie, did you introduce yourself before? I don't think so. If you're there and talking, you're on mute. Maybe he stepped away. How about Katrina?
Hi, I was on the phone call and I got home from picking up my husband. So I'm on video now, and I was the MN 350 volunteer.
Ah, okay. Great. So how about other comments, questions? How does this sound?
Well,
John?
I think it's a great approach that you're using. And I kind of share Steve's, I don't know, reticence, or however you want to explain about the COP26 conference. I happened to be sitting in on a Zoom meeting with the co-founder of the Extinction Rebellion. And Steve, you may know who this is, or everybody might know, Rupert Reed, he's British and was educated at Oxford and got his environmental philosophy degree at Rutgers here in the United States. And he is sadly, I mean, he's really pessimistic and kind of warning people that, don't get too excited about what comes out of COP26. It may sound great, but it's kind of like, and we know that there's a lot of pushback going on. And so this endeavor that we're doing here, we can just kind of personally kind of realize we are being very historic and in participating in this and keeping our fingers crossed for the best outcomes.
Yeah, there's a lot of new infrastructure that needs to be built that's been in the news recently too, and every single piece of it is built in a place, and that's you all.
Right.
Laura, you have your hand up, and then Wallace.
Yes. Hi. So my initial reaction is that I think, oops, this is great. And I was wondering, I know we're still in the fledgling stages of planning, but I assume that part of the communications around this is going to be putting pressure on at least the state, if not the federal government, to also provide assistance. And I know Steve said that counties are kind of a vital link, which I agree. Thank you for the props. But we are also dependent on the state in a way that cities oftentimes aren't. Like we need to have a good working relationship with them to be able to do our job and administer the services that we're going to administer. And that's not to say that we can't ever ask them for things, but I'm wondering what kind of tone you're thinking of taking in the communications with the state. Like, are we asking? Are we demanding? Are we going to be agitating? I'm curious if y'all have thought about that yet.
I'm going to start that and I'll let others talk about it. I mean, we haven't talked about it specifically as of yet. And so you can be part of that, of helping to create the tone that works for you all. I will say that my approach in this, and I think our general approach has been, as opposed to demanding or asking, I think it's more calling on people, calling people in to be part of something that's really important to do, right? So it's more, we're facing this challenge. It's time we're stepping up, we're showing leadership by doing this, right? All of us working together. We need you to do the same, right? We want you to do the same. So I think it's a positive message, but it's calling people into participating into something that's really important. At least that's my sense. But as I said, we're going to have our first communications planning discussion at our meeting next week, and so we'll work through exactly what that is. I'd love to hear
Sounds
others'
great.
comments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you mentioned that over the summer you all have been working on the resolutions into the League of Minnesota Cities policy platform, which is a kind of long and still ongoing process. But the tone of those has been, we have our goals and we sure could use your help to help us succeed. Wallace, you had your hand up, and then I see Rick, your hand.
Yes, and declaring an emergency is important, but it implies that you want the city to do something about that. And that takes money, and it likely takes an inventory of greenhouse gases that the city generates, or and I'm wondering, I know Duluth has a plan to reduce their greenhouse gases, and I'm wondering how many other cities represented here have a similar plan.
A number of them do, Wallace. I've forgotten already which city you're with.
Woodbury.
Woodbury, the Metropolitan Council, whether you like them or hate them, one of the things they have done recently is put together a greenhouse gas inventory for the entire metro area that can be accessed on a city by city level in order to save you all the work of having to gather all that data. So if you are in the metro area, you've got something to really start with. Those of you that have greenhouse gas plans or climate action plans, maybe stick a note in the chat there. Rick and then Beth.
Bill.
Wallace. So as the mayor of Robbinsdale, 15,000, small city that is Green Step 2, that I wish was a Green Step 5, know that I think it's very advantageous to be in this group, to learn from the cities that are farther ahead than we are. And, we have done what we can do without the staff and the money. And we've done a lot of things, and I could go through them, what they all are. But I view this group as an opportunity to, what we have said before, leverage and make our voice stronger for more aid and help from governments above. And then B, to go and find out, like any time in any business, from those who are ahead of us and have templates and policies that we can just copy and learn from rather than inventing the wheel all over again. So I just think no matter what kind of a city you are, there's an advantage to being in this group. The template also of the resolution says that not only do we think that there's an emergency, but we're going to do something about it. And what we're going to do is going to be tailored to our own individual abilities and needs.
Rick, how's this sounding from Grand Rapids? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, and I don't know how to put my hand down. Do I do that or do you do that? Anyway.
I think maybe you do it.
The same place, wherever you put it up, the same place.
Okay, there we go. Well, it says raise, but anyway, I guess what I wanted to say is that we need each other, and it's similar to, I know what Steve said, and I know what science says, but I want to say that we need each other for moral support, because unfortunately, that's not the way a significant part of our world operates. Just the fact that science says it's true, and you look around and see what's happening, that doesn't seem to mean much to a lot of people. And so I like the fact that there's a group that you can kind of lean on or be part of, that, when this resolution is made and this happens, there's going to be a pushback from a certain part of the population. And that bothers me. I just wish that we could move forward without that, but unfortunately that is there. So anyway, so the moral support part, that's important. I appreciate everybody's efforts. Thanks.
I just want to, Rick, that's a great point. And in some of our earlier meetings and discussions, things like that were raised. And I was really happy with how the group kind of came together and gave ideas, not moral support, but also ideas and thoughts of how to address issues that were going to come up, and how that there really is a lot more wisdom in a group together than us individually. And so I would envision that this group does that over time.
How about Beth?
Thank you. I guess my questions are a little bit devil's advocate to some extent. So we already have a climate action plan. We're a Green Step City 5, which means we have a lot of work to do still to keep that. But what advantage is there to us to doing this? We're not going to adopt another climate action plan. And does it mean, are there ties to funding? Are we making a commitment to doing certain dollar things? Because we are very good at adopting aspirational plans, and not always so great about putting dollars behind things. Just an observation.
Well, one thing that came up in previous conversations, Beth, is maybe it puts a little wind under your wings as a staffer. But Larry, you were about to speak.
Well, actually, Beth, so St. Louis Park is a similar situation. We have the same characteristics as you mentioned. And what I see for us, why I'm interested in this, a number of reasons. One is, I think it can help to call attention within our community as we try to mobilize folks to get more involved and take more action themselves. We'll pair it with some kind of local action or local thing to do that. The other thing I think will happen is we need help at the state level to achieve what we need to achieve. And so this can help that. It's going to give us, the more we stick together on this, it will give us a bigger voice at the Capitol. And I've already had conversations with some folks in the legislature about it to let them know. And then lastly, I would say it can help us, help our colleagues in other cities and counties to make progress. And if we're all doing things together, it's just going to reverberate and help not only our own communities, but helps address the problem, helps making more of an impact. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes when there's federal money that's coming through, the legislature gets involved in deciding how to spend it. And, you know, exactly what that money would be for seems to be still a shifting picture, but there still might be a relatively lot of it. Joan.
Yes, hi. Yes, Red Wing is a 5-step city, and we also had an action plan that was created with the help of the Great Plains Institute. And for those of you who are from there today, we appreciate that. But I think the approach to tone should be very positive. There's a lot of misinformation about how climate change is going to destroy jobs. And I think we need to kind of turn that around to how this can really help the community, our communities, and you know, to entice, you know, tax incentives and whatever, and mention the visions that you're working on. I think that that's going to be our intent with our resolution. We've made a lot of progress in solar. We want to look toward other ideas of wind energy, et cetera, and, you know, just kind of get it out there.
Yeah. How about Steve and then Katrina? Steve, your community is a little different.
Yeah, you know, we're out, you know, bordering North Dakota. There's many of the political sentiments from North Dakota, you know, obviously it's this area, but, you know, I think that one of the things I was going to say is that, you know, to piggyback on what Rick was saying, it's nice to have support. And if you look at the climate opinion polls that Yale does, and usually Lola's the one that brings this up, so I get to bring it up because it is, you know, one of the questions they ask is the percent of adults. It is broken down by county. And you can go over Minnesota. I mean, the really thing is you should look at the map and it's like, oh, it's all above 50% pretty much everywhere. There's a few places that are 49%, so they're a little shaded blue, but everywhere else it's red. And some places, you know, it's really dark red. And it tells me if you go over Minnesota that everywhere is 60% or more of the people in your county actually believe that global warming is happening. And I use the word believe there because, you know, as a scientist, it's like, you know, I want to talk facts and stuff, but, you know, it really is this unfortunate issue where people can kind of, I want to say, choose how they view the world. But I think that a lot of times we're thinking that people don't support this action, and they actually are. And I could go a lot more on this because that was what I was just talking to my students about this afternoon.
Steve, see if this is the map you're talking about. There's this Yale Center for Climate Change Communication, for those of you that don't know. And they do and have been doing for years regular polling.
Yeah, so you hit the 2018 maps, and which is great. Go back in time and see how it shifts. But I chatted one earlier that was the 2019 maps, or 2020 maps, sorry.
Oh, okay. Shows what I know. Katrina.
Yeah, I was wondering what, from a community member, I don't have a large voice other than my vote when election time comes, what we could do to help further this declaration, if we're maybe encouraging our council people or senators, House of Representatives, can we be writing letters and encouraging them to join the members who are planning on making this declaration? Is there a position too small or too big that we can reach out to help get more names added to the list?
Bill.
So Katrina, let's pretend I was the mayor of the city that you live in. And let's pretend on this seminar I got your phone number. We next Monday, or our next council meeting, we're talking about forming a group to partner up with Xcel Energy And we need community people to tell us how we can use XL Energy's good offices and their expertise to, it's something called PI, to make a plan for Robbinsdale. And they do a lot of the work for us. With regard to all your other questions, yes, all of those things, going on the Robbinsdale website or whatever city you're in, and finding out the email addresses of your council members and saying, hey, I'm concerned about this and I want you to go forward, community, and do something about climate change. And the more you do, the better. And there's other people that probably could respond to this question also.
Thank you.
Katrina, I think earlier on you mentioned the kind of social media work that 350.org does. And I think I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think the sense I've heard is go for it.
Yeah.
That's encouraging to hear. I think that a lot of times, especially in the social media atmosphere, the easiest thing to do to feel like you've done something is simply retweet something or repost, but that action doesn't always necessarily do anything. In some cases, it actually angers people. But if it could be a simple call to action as writing your council member and then building up to the higher levels, we could get more and more people involved in pushing their leadership to join this cause. And I think that's an excellent opportunity to get the word out, and something I would be really excited to see MN 350 pursue.
How about others of you that do organizing work? Joan, I see your hand.
So yeah, what I was just going to suggest is I'm just so happy to see a younger person involved in the conversation here. Like, for example, when we do a lot of the resolutions and things in Red Wing, and I'm sure at other cities as well, we usually have people who are supportive of that show up and fill up the gallery, so to speak, and that provides some extra boost. So city council members are seeing all these people showing up and say, wow, I guess we should really consider this endeavor. So I think that's positive to encourage as part of the communications plan, that when your city does introduce this resolution, that you encourage community members to be invited to join along.
Larry?
Yeah.
Want to respond to that? And then I see Dominique's hand.
Yeah, I just want to say, I love that question, Katrina, and contact council members, contact staff, let them know about this. If you think you have someone who resonates with this issue, call them, organize. I, did that in a prior life, and you should assume that they don't know this is happening, right? And so you're letting them know about this and letting them know that you care.
Dominique, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think I just put it up initially when you would raise the point about those who do the organizing. But I think I misunderstood the prompt. Although I appreciate the invitation to this call. I was gonna ask earlier, since I was calling in and only had the audio, is there a way I could follow up with somebody after this to get to be able to review some of the visual materials you all shared?
Absolutely. We will send them out. We have your email since you registered. Emma, you'll send the recording?
Yes, I can send all the material to those that attended.
And there's a bunch of contact information that's a part of it as well. Dominique, say again what organization you were with. Your voice was staticky on the phone.
Sorry about that. I was in transition. So I'm with the Sierra Club, and I'm based in the Twin Cities, and I'm also a member of the St. Paul Climate Justice Advisory Board.
Perfect.
Yeah,
you'll notice there's no one from St. Paul here.
Yeah, I just reviewed that, kind of going through the participants, at least no one I was familiar with. So I'm eager to follow up and look more into this.
Great.
We call
I
that.
live in St. Paul, if that counts.
Say again?
There.
This
Darren
is
lives in
Darren.
St. Paul.
I live in St. Paul, if that counts.
Well,
Totally
that's a start.
Yeah.
Steve?
Oh, I was just going to say that's a great opportunity, and you know, this we are welcoming, and you know, although sometimes it can seem partisan, and speaking as a scientist, which I never thought science would ever become a partisan issue, you know, kind of. It's disconcerting because but this is not meant to be partisan at all. In fact, a lot of the groups that you're starting to see, especially young people, young Republicans are asking, demanding that there's action taken on these issues because they can see it, and sticking your head in the sand isn't going to make them go away. Just means you won't see it coming when it hits you.
Molly, how's this sounding from Murray County?
Sorry, I turned my video off. I'm feeding my baby. I am often and even not even just my county and the region, I'm often kind of like a lone duck, it feels like. So I don't think I'd be able to get this passed right now, but I like to keep it on my radar. I think the comments about like showing up, huge. People hardly ever show up, especially out in our rural areas. There's only 8,000 people in my county. I mean, it's very rare that somebody comes to a board meeting or even emails us, really. And when we get the emails that are organized, it's often like you'll get 5 that are carbon copies, and so customizing them a little bit is usually so. I love it, and I hope it can move forward around the state. And we, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that we see is like, oh, so my neighbor did it, therefore we should do it. It's not really, it doesn't even matter that much what we think in the room sometimes, or the science, or the the logic behind it. It's that peer pressure of spreading out throughout all the communities really is effective.
One thing that's worked for me in Robbinsdale, sometimes when there's skepticism, is the economic argument that, well, hey, look at these things, back when we were doing LED bulbs, this pays for itself. It's good for the environment and it pays for itself. So you may have some opportunities to do something like that too.
Oh, for sure. We've got, we're on Buffalo Ridge, so we've got loads of wind towers and loads of solar, and there's almost no resistance to that. And when it is resistance, it's transparent, it's not really that effective. But the economic impact is, across party lines. It doesn't really matter. What party you vote, right?
Steve points out that 64% of adults think global warming is, what did it say, Steve, happening?
Oh, that's good.
So that's a start. Dominique, you had your hand up here.
Yeah, I think I actually have a point this time. Thank you. So I shared earlier that I'm with the Climate Justice Advisory Board in St. Paul, and I'm not sure what other cities or counties might have like similar formations, but this was created via act of the City Council last year to oversee the implementation of the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan for the City of St. Paul, and I'll paste a link to that in the chat. And we've recently had some back and forth with the city attorney about what we can and what we can't do. And so all that to say, like, I'd be interested if folks could share some ideas on how we might be able to do this via pushing for policies that come from proposals like this, or, because you had mentioned it being nonpartisan. Did that make sense? For like kind of a public advisories where your hands are more or less tied, I'd love to hear some feedback on how we could continue to push similar things.
Larry?
Yeah. Well, I know that group. We actually had Russ Stark tell us about it several months ago. So excited to hear how things are progressing with the group you're part of. Well, I think, number one, would love to see you all, let Russ and some of the council members know that you want them to participate in this. And and with their participation to make sure that there's, and there is in here, but to make sure there's a strong climate justice message coming out of St. Paul. And then, I think you can come to the meetings as we go forward. I'm planning on this. Hey, we're about out of time, and I have one more slide if I may share here.
Do.
Okay. Next steps and follow-up here. So plan your community's emergency resolution, whether it be a city or a county. We have templates. Use that, generate interest in your community. Join us, other officials, for further discussion and planning. Our next meeting of the group, not a webinar, but meeting to plan on this, is November 3rd from 4 to 5:15. If you don't have an invite to that, let Emma know. We will follow up with anyone that has attended this to make sure you have an invite. Share the resolution, the webinar recording, resolution templates. Share it as widely as you see necessary. And then, keep us informed of how it's going. There's a form you can fill out, or you can send an email to MRI about how it's going. And I want to close by saying a couple things. 8 years ago, I actually left the corporate world to focus on become a climate activist and do stuff. And then I ran for office in St. Louis Park on a climate platform. There's a lot of depressing stuff when you're in this world, right? And thinking about this. And we're right now as was mentioned with the UN's recent statement that we're on track for 2.7 degrees Celsius, we're in a pretty dire situation. And yet I would also say we're in a very hopeful situation. I have the most hope that I've had in the 8 years I've been doing this work. And it's because a lot of the data that Steve was talking about. People are now seeing and realizing that it is happening. So I think we are at a critical point right now, which is why I'm so bought in and emphatic about what we're trying to do here by coming together. I kind of think about it as right now, this issue is like a big boulder at the top of a gently sloping hill. And down one side of the hill is gradually and increasingly accelerating climate change and sentencing our kids and grandkids and future generations to a pretty dismal future. But down the other side, and we can have a say in this, is momentum that gradually builds towards solving the problem. And as that momentum builds, it will at some point we'll start getting solutions and things happening faster than we thought possible. So, I've been trying to push on that boulder. What I see with this group here, if we can all come together, is the ability to give that boulder a much bigger shove. And I think we're all going to be in future asking, what did we do at this time and how much can we shove that boulder? And so I thank you all for your time today, for caring about this issue, and hopefully for helping provide leadership either within your communities, within your counties, pushing on your elected officials or others to be involved in this. And whatever support you need, I think the folks that have been speaking and others are here to provide that assistance. So thank you all. We'll be sending out all the materials within a day or so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great session. Great.